and wounded more than 6,000. The kamikazes were the deadliest weapon ever launched against the U.S. Navy, so frighteningly effective that their existence was initially kept secret from the American public. On April 16, 1945, kamikazes knocked the USS Laffey out of the war. The Laffey was rebuilt. She is now a museum ship in Charleston, North Carolina. Today, she's receiving visitors, her skipper and 4 crew members from World War II. The sight of their ship raises a tide of memories for these comrades in arms. Rear Admiral F. Julian Beckton, who died in 1995, was 81 when he gave this interview. He commanded the Laffey during the invasions of Normandy and the Philippines. Steaming toward Okinawa, he knew what perils lay ahead.
The kamikazes were the most effective weapon that the Japanese developed during the war. And it was a desperate effort on their part to do it, but they they had a terrible effect on our ships out there.
Ensign James Townley would win a Silver Star for his valor aboard the Laffey.
My opinion of the kamikazes were that they were misguided people. And then we learned more about them. We found out that, yes, they were the sons of the divine wind, or whatever they chose to call them. We call them one-way Charlies. And we were really scared to death of them, because no matter what you did, unless you could shoot them out of the air, they were coming in.
Gunners Mate Second Class Lawrence Delusky would earn a Bronze Star before his 21st birthday.
Everybody has their own way of thinking and their own ideas, and their ways didn't suit us. I certainly didn't feel as complacent as I feel now 45 years later. At that point, I was ready to kill them all.
In Japan, another group of old comrades gathers for a reunion. These men were once the elite of the Japanese kamikaze corps, the Thunder Gods. They should be long dead, but they survived. Some because they flew fighter cover, others because seniority kept them out of combat to await America's invasion of the homeland. Now largely forgotten, they once made up an awesome attack force. Their weapon was the Oka, which meant exploding cherry blossom. But Americans gave it the code name Baka, meaning fool.
The weapon for another type of kamikaze attack, a Baka bomb captured on Okinawa. It's a 2.5-ton flying bomb dropped from a mother plane and carrying a suicide pilot. 3 rocket propulsion units are set off on approaching the target, giving a maximum level speed of 535 miles an hour. Baka's punch is an armor-piercing 2,600-pound warhead. It's the first weapon specially designed for the kamikaze flying corps.
Reserve Lieutenant Hashiro Hosokawa was a senior member of an Oka squadron.
じゃあもう簡単に言うと、同じ死ぬにも犬死にという日本の言葉があります。
There is a Japanese word, inujini, die like a dog, meaning die in vain. It is a wasteful death without honor. When I became a pilot, the situation was already so bad that fighting in an ordinary way was no use. We were chosen as elite pilots. Each of us received a headband and a dagger. We thought it was a privilege granted only to the members of the human torpedo unit, the elite Oka Corps, and that we would die gloriously.
These were the Thunder Gods. All had volunteered. All were ready to die. Each year, they gathered to pray for their fallen comrades. Commander Kunihiro Iwaki was vice commander of the Corps.
海軍の伝統としましてね。
The war situation was going so badly for Japan at that time that we realized that any semblance of normal military tactics could not possibly succeed. And we had to do the unthinkable or the incomprehensible in terms of the military acts in a last-ditch attempt to primarily get the American aircraft carriers. Given that situation, the men realized they had to become one with the bomb in that last final struggle.
Lieutenant Morimasa Yunokawa commanded an Oka squadron.
自分が死ぬとか死なないとかいうことは
The thought of my death crossed my mind only for a fraction of a second. I was then thinking of only to serve. No matter how you try to understand how things were then, now in this peacetime, I don't think you can.
A kamikaze could send a ship to its grave, but each flyer had only one chance for success. Pilots were supposed to aim for battleships and aircraft carriers, but destroyers and their radar gear were also targets. Aboard the Laffey, nervous sailors repeated tales of picket ships breaking in half and sinking immediately.
The crew would always debate where is the safest place to be. That was always the big talk. Is it safer to be below, or is it safer to be on deck, or in the bridge, or wherever? They all had their own theories about where was the safest place. Of course, there was no safe place.
In April 1945, the noose was tightening on Japan. As the Battle of Okinawa began, destroyers patrolled 50 miles closer to Japan, tempting kamikazes taking off from the mainland. Suicide attackers had sunk several destroyers on this battle station. Now it was the Laffey's turn to stand watch. On April 16th, the ship began its third day on the perimeter. The mood aboard was tense. At 8:27 a.m., the Laffey's number came up.
Well, the first ones were they sort of circled around out pretty far, maybe 10,000 yards, and they'd kind of, then all of a sudden, it's like some sort of signal, they started coming in, and first they just came in one or two at a time, but then they started coming in several at a time, and you just couldn't take them all under fire, so that's when we started getting hit.
For 80 minutes, the Laffey's crew fought off the heaviest kamikaze attack ever on a single ship.
Our closest call was a plane coming in on the starboard beam. And it was, when I first saw it, it was low on the water, about 10,000 yards out.
I figured it was about eight seconds away from certain death unless the gunners got it. And our Mount 52, which was just forward of the bridge, was firing at it and firing fast.
I noticed that the bursts were just off, just missing him. So I just moved it, and the next one went right into hit him right in the nose, and just blew him up. And that one was the one that would have gotten us all.
And it just literally disintegrated. And everybody heaved a big sigh of relief. And just after that, then here came one in out of the sky on the port side, one came in low on the water on the port quarter, and we were at it all over again.
morning of April 16th, we had a suicide plane hit us right about here. It hit with enough impact so that this gun was blown up, canted upward at more than a 45-degree angle. The motor of that plane skidded along the inside of this left-hand gun and wound up at the hatchway in the back of the gun on this side. And when he hit over there, I was blown up the deck about 15 feet. And when I regained consciousness, that's where I was.
Ripped from stem to stern by the attacks of Jap suicide pilots off Okinawa, the destroyer USS Laffey comes home. The Laffey was struck with everything in the Jap book. In the savage attempt to finish her off, 22 suicide pilots roared over her. 7 bomb-loaded planes crashed on her decks. The final score was 9 enemy planes shot down by the Laffey. But 32 of her brave men were dead or missing, and 60 were wounded.
In the words of her skipper, Commander Becton, she was truly the ship that would not die. Flying conventional aircraft, kamikaze pilots caused terrible damage. But the Oka Corps never really got a chance to affect the war's outcome. The bombers that carried the Okas were slow, and American fighter pilots shot down most of them before they could release their deadly cargo. By war's end, Hosokawa was his unit's only surviving officer. He found the transition to peacetime troubling.
それからちょうど台風眼の中にいちゃったんじゃないかと。
All of a sudden, the war was over, and I had the feeling of someone who had been in the eye of a typhoon. And suddenly the typhoon is gone. The weather is clear and beautiful. No one, nothing is left but myself. And the feeling is, why? It's a very strange feeling that I cannot understand. Why the typhoon spared me.
Thankful, dear Father, that you saw us through these difficult days.
They were doing
Dear Father, we will
what they felt was right, just as we were doing what we felt was right. It had to be. How else could you put your life on the line for something you didn't believe in?
Preserve this ship and for the cause of freedom. We ask, dear Father, that their memory continue with us always.